It's Tuesday, October 6, 2020. I'm Matt Miller at Trekzone HQ. Coming up today, the space station goes into lockdown as the crew works to identify the source of a leak. Astronomers using the Very Large Telescope in Chile have found a supermassive black hole and a web of galaxies caught in its gravitational pull. And Mars is now the closest it's going to get for another decade and a half. Gaze skyward and catch a bright red dot. Those stories, plus the headlines, coming up on today's Talkin' Science.
Beaming around the world with the latest science and space news on Facebook Watch, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. This is Talkin' Science with Dr. Brad Tucker and Matt Miller.
And a very happy Talkin' Science Tuesday to Dr. Brad Tucker. Welcome to the show again, friend.
How's it going?
Really good. I've just been updating the episode database here, just my own little Excel spreadsheet, keeping track of the episodes that I do, and we're up to episode 95 of Talkin' Science. We've been doing this for a few weeks.
Nice.
And we've covered a whole range of stuff. So much has been happening in the 2 years that we've been chatting. There's so much more to come over the next few years as well.
That's exactly right. There's always more surprises in store.
And for all those surprises, people can find you on social media at Dr. Brad Tucker on Twitter, Dr. Brad Tucker on Facebook. I'm on Twitter at Miramat86, and of course Trekzone all over social media. Brad, let's get into the show straight away.
Talking Science Headlines.
And first up, back-to-back launch scrubs. A frustrating Elon Musk, but are doing the right thing, saving him a few $1 billion each time, I think.
That's exactly right. There is 2 attempts at launching a GPS satellite, and yeah, they had to scrub it twice within, I think it was about 36 hours. Both times just a few seconds before launch. And as you said, obviously, when you scrub it, that means usually there's potentially something not going perfectly according to plan, which if you do launch usually results in not good things, so eventually saving effort down the road.
Well, one of the reasons was an out-of-family ground sensor reading that was picked up at about 18 seconds before liftoff from 39A, and the other one as well just recently within the last 24 hours. So yeah, something going a little bit funky down there in Florida for SpaceX, but they need to have a look at these and see what's going on.
That's exactly right. And I think the second one was related to a pressure in the gas generator. And so they're just, small things in complex machines. And, as you say, they had a goal of getting, I think, 48 launches next year.
Yeah.
So obviously wants to make sure that, you learn from these mistakes and learn from these problems to fix them and have smoother sailing down the road.
And that drive to 48 is double this year's effort and is basically a launch a week, which is just incredible to think that we're sort of in a position to be able to even consider that.
And then when you start adding in all the other launches, that, it's just going to be a thing where we're getting multiple launches per week next year. Which is pretty wild.
Absolutely. Well, from launch failures to launch successes, and the Cygnus spacecraft has blasted off on an Antares rocket to the space station with 4 tons of equipment for the space station, including its new loo.
That's right. This is a multi-million-dollar toilet upgraded for both comfort and also practicability in terms of how much water it uses, how much space it takes, and as part of this new design of how do we go better where we've boldly gone before.
Absolutely. And when you're on the move and on the go, you just need to go.
That's exactly right. And so, it's a very practical thing that they were doing. And this is obviously in the hope of new toilet designs for the moon and further on, and trying to get better, more efficient systems going. So very practical thing.
Now, trust NASA to come up with a really formal sounding name that you wouldn't quite understand is basically just a glorified porcelain throne. It's the Universal Waste Management System. I mean, they're not wrong. It is.
It's very NASA. Even when they had the space nappies, it was some sort of like under garment fluid accident system or something like that, which was just a space nappy.
Well, speaking of the space station, speaking of activities on the space station, if you will, very soon they're going to be filming a spacewalk in virtual reality for people at home that want to experience the adventure without the risk or the training.
We've seen virtual tours of the space station before, and one of the cool things that this will do is to be able to capture a spacewalk, and really get that full experience of what it's like to be on a spacewalk when you're outside in your suit looking around, which is one of the hardest jobs really an astronaut does, the riskiest job, being able to now have other people experience it.
It is very cool. And reading the article on what this camera is going to be doing, things I didn't even consider, but obviously the camera is going to be in space. It's going to be in the vacuum of space. It's going to deal with the vacuum, UV radiation, ionizing radiation, plasma, and the extremes of temperatures from minus 250 degrees Fahrenheit to 250 degrees in the positive, depending on the sun exposure. So it's going to deal with all of that while shooting in 4K and 360 degrees.
Yeah, space is not an easy thing. It beats you up. There's lots of different extremes, as you just said. So it's not just simply just taking a normal camera and getting it to work. So it has to work in the harsh conditions of space and be able to capture the amazing footage at the same time. So, I think everyone's kind of excited and looking forward to what it may produce. But definitely it's not a walk in the park, so to speak.
One of the companies, NanoWorks, that has designed the camera has put it in a hermetically sealed aluminium radiation shielded housing. It's got active heating and passive cooling systems. It's going to be able to survive exposure to space for a full week, which is just incredible. I'm thinking of just these floating images of Earth that could also be produced.
Yeah, look, I think they'll get some amazing shots that people just love when it's released. So, all the best to them, and we look forward to seeing the results.
Talking Science, Stories of the Week.
All right, Brad, into the stories of the week. And we're staying on the space station. Hopefully the crew find what they're looking for with this story, because it's potentially catastrophic. Maybe not in the size that it is. Well, of course, we're talking about this leak, this air leak that they were woken up to find a few days ago.
Yeah, so this leak on the space station has been going around for a couple of months. And then a couple of days ago, it appeared to start getting worse. So leaking more air. And when we're talking about leak, we're literally talking about a hole in the space station letting out the oxygen and obviously pressure and that sort of stuff. And this becomes obviously the worry. You don't want to be venting atmosphere, essentially. That's what this hole is doing. And also in the area that they eventually discovered it, you don't want it to impact the living quarters of astronauts. If it's kind of in a non-used place, that's okay. But in an area where people do live and work and stuff like that, it's a big worry. And, trying to track it down and solve it is a key goal right now.
Now, the search stepped up a notch last week following what appeared to be a growth in the leak, but it turned out that was an erroneous reading caused by a temperature change on board. So again, like we sort of want to hype it up to make people click on the video and that sort of stuff, but we have to be very careful here. While I say it is a potentially catastrophic situation, and it is, but the rate at which it is leaking the atmosphere currently poses no threat to the crew on board, and hopefully they can identify it before erroneous readings turn out to be true, and we do have a growth in this hole.
Yeah, and this is why they started to look at it, is they appeared to be getting worse, but in fact it was just a temperature change, and temperature is proportionate to pressure. So if you change one, you can change the other. So if you're fooled on temperature, you can be fooled on pressure. So it's a very easy thing to happen. And obviously it made them worry and try and source it out more. But I guess the good thing is, in doing so, they essentially, like you do at home, if you're trying to find a draft, they sealed off every room, sealed off all the doors and everything like that, and actually pinpointed where the hole or where the leak was coming from. So they at least have a good understanding of now where in the space station it is in terms of modules, which was a big step forward. But as you said, it's been around for a while. So it's not a dramatic worry, but it is something they want to fix eventually.
And they've pinpointed it down to the Russian module, which contains life support equipment for the space station, but also the living quarters for 2 of the crew members.
What you worry about is, as you said, over time, it getting worse. The metal fatiguing, the hole getting bigger, any number of things. And so that is actually the ultimate long-term worry, when at some point it could get worse. So they don't want to just leave it forever, but at least it's not as urgent as they were originally worried about a few days ago.
And the potential cause for this, Brad, is anything really that we could think of, from microasteroidal impact, meteorite impact, space debris. There could be a whole heap of things. In 2018, a Soyuz capsule had a 2 millimeter drill hole in it. So there's lots of things that it could be, and I think it just reminds us all that it's a pretty delicate object up there in orbit.
It is. That's right. There's a lot of different things that could have caused this, and it's almost less about the cause as well, and more about just solving it. Potentially, obviously, if you can prevent it in the future, that's great. But really, solving the hole as is. And moving on with it, so you don't have any issues.
And it's also not good when you're sending a new crew up, when you're doing the mission handover, and you go, oh, by the way, there's a leak somewhere over there. Good luck with that. Bye. But of course, the astronauts do have a backup plan if the worst does happen. There is an emergency Soyuz capsule docked at the space station, which they can take refuge in if needs be, or even return to Earth as well.
Yeah, and that's always the backup option on the space station, even used, as we talked about last week with the avoidance maneuver, is they can always use it to evacuate if needed. So they're not in any danger or any risk, but you obviously don't want your nice $150 billion space station to get ruined.
Alrighty, Brad, next up this week, we're heading a little further out from the solar system, and astronomers using Chile's Very Large Telescope have discovered a black hole, a really massive black hole that's got a spider's web of 6 galaxies trapped inside.
Yeah, a really cool discovery. So this supermassive black hole, which is what we call a quasar. So this is just essentially a massive black hole dominated galaxy, which is about 900 million years after the Big Bang. It's been discovered to have been, in this cosmic web with 6 other galaxies, where you have a bunch of gas floating around in this area connected with these galaxies, and it appears to be feeding the black hole. And this is actually quite exciting because it's actually giving some clues as to a problem that people have been wondering for a while, and that is, how do these black holes this early in the universe get this big?
They just eat and eat and eat, much like teenagers.
Yeah, look,
these supermassive black holes in that timeline aren't necessarily teenagers, though, are they?
Well, no, but this is the question: is they're more younger than teenagers, but they're eating like teenagers, and this has always been the question: is how do they get that big? Where is their food, so to speak? Where is the gas and stuff that they're feeding on? And the fact that we see all of this gas connected with these galaxies, this gas both fuels the galaxies, so this eventually creates new stars, all that sort of cool stuff, but it also can be pulled in by the black hole to feed it as well. So this may be a really big clue into the understanding and growth and evolution, as we call it, of how supermassive black holes evolve with time.
Well, this quasar is nicknamed J1030, and it's got another teenage property that it's exhibiting as well. It's living in a deep, dark corner of space.
That's exactly right. It's galaxies form in what we call voids and filaments. And so this is kind of like a local filament, as we say, like a local web. But for the most part, there's not a lot of stuff around it. So maybe these black holes just find themselves in quieter, darker places, but gather a bit of stuff around it to help it feed. So obviously people want to start discovering or looking at more of these types of things to give us a bit of better clue about the growth rate of these supermassive black holes, which, eventually form big ones today.
Well, you mentioned that it's 900 million years old, but a couple of other really cool facts about it. is that it's 300 times the size of the Milky Way galaxy, which is incomprehensible as well. But not only that, it also has 1 billion times more mass than our sun. That is incredible.
Yeah, when we look at our galaxy, our supermassive black hole, Sagittarius A star, is about 4 million times the mass of our sun, and this is already a billion. And we see other billion solar mass black holes in the nearest by universe, kind of our area, but we don't expect them that far away or that young, which means that, give this billions of years, the supermassive black hole will get even more monstrous. And so does it just swallow up all this gas? Does it go to the galaxies? Does it split it evenly? Lots of questions remain, but obviously a big step in understanding how these things become to be.
And another theory is positing dark matter halos, the invisible matter, dark matter, providing some of the early building blocks for the universe. There's a theory that these might be at play here, helping to connect everything together.
That's right. We often see, even when you look at a normal galaxy, that the extent of the dark matter halo or the amount of dark matter is much further than the normal matter. And so maybe in this case, there's actually lots of dark matter here, which wouldn't be all that surprising. But because the dark matter has mass, therefore has gravity, it traces the gas, and therefore the black hole, which would make sense to be at the center of it, is interacting to some degree with this dark matter and helping to create this big, massive structure. So, either way, it's going to give us some clues about just black hole formation, but also galaxy formation as a whole, how galaxies grow. So kind of finding these really big, massive, unexplained things always helps us explain other things.
And the Next Generation Telescope, the extremely large telescope, is going to be tasked with observing the faint points of light in the vicinity of J1030, with the theory that these could be even more galaxies.
Yeah, obviously people are thinking, well, if we have one, there's probably multiple, and the quest will be on to find more of these with the Next Generation Telescopes, as you said.
You can get social with Trekzone. Australia's unofficial home of Star Trek is everywhere you are. Just search for Trekzone.
And Brad, last up this week, back to our solar system. Nothing major is happening except that Mars is getting closer, and it'll be the closest it'll be until 2035.
If you've been looking out at the sky, you've been noticing that Mars is potentially getting a bit brighter. And this is because it's coming at what we call opposition. And opposition is where the sun, Earth, and the planet, in this case Mars, are directly in a line. And by being directly in a line, that means between the Earth and Mars, we're at our closest approach. And therefore, Mars is a bit bigger and a bit brighter in the sky. Not dramatically, not anything that you kind of see on social media where it's bigger than the full moon or anything, but it's a nice, bright, solid object. And this is happening this week.
Interestingly, in the orbits, Earth overtakes Mars about once every 780 days, just over 2 years. That's obviously the orbit around the sun. But not everything is a perfect circle with all of these orbits. So this is where we get this opposition and close approaches, far distant approaches. Well, lots of good can come out of studying all of this and predicting all of this with space missions and obviously Artemis heading to Mars as well. But not only crewed missions, but all the robots that we send over there all the time.
That's right. As you said, every orbit isn't perfect. In fact, even these close approaches can vary by about 10 million kilometers. So it's, that's a big distance when you're talking about the course of traveling there. If you can shave 10 million kilometers off your trip, you're going to take advantage of that. And as you said, these approaches happen about every 2 years, which is why we see these Mars missions launched every 25 months, essentially. And so it's a really kind of cool phenomenon that you get to see. And we just really get to see it well with Mars. It happens with the other planets. It happens with Jupiter and Saturn. It just happens less often because they're further away. So these approaches, these points of opposition just happen less. We did just have Jupiter and Saturn actually at opposition, which is why they've been also big and bright in the sky. It's been a great year for planet seeing. But in this case, with Mars, it's on one of its closest approaches this week.
Well, I think it's the least 2020 could have done for us is for astronomers and amateur astronomers to escape to their telescopes and look out to the solar system.
Yeah, it's always a nice thing to be able to go out and see some great things. And October will be overall a great month for stargazing. It starts with these Mars views, and then we'll get some other things that we'll talk about later this month. So it's a great chance to enjoy the outside.
Now, one thing I didn't realize until reading this article that you sent through for the show is that the seasons on Mars are based on its orbit, not its axial tilt like Earth. So being closer to the sun, obviously closer to Earth, closer to the sun, it's summer over there on the red planet.
Yeah, and Mars does have a tilt that affects it, but it also, because of its slightly orbit, it's also related to its position around the sun. So it actually kind of has like two kinds of seasons. So it makes it a little bit different compared to the seasons on Earth. Instead of just being purely by our tilt, it's both based on its orbit and its tilt, which makes it quite interesting.
And summer coincides with the highest dust storm risks. We had some pretty famous ones in 2001 and 2018. So again, studying all of these elements that make up the orbit of this planet that we're so fascinated by, and we're sending so many missions to, and we're planning to send so many missions to, and humans as well.
Yeah, that's right. It's there's lots of things that happened, and in that 2018 dust storm knocked out Opportunity rover and essentially destroyed it because of all the dust that covered up its solar panels and everything. So studying these seasonal changes in its orbit really do matter, and not just even for going to the planet, but the understanding of planets as a whole, and what it means for our understanding of Earth and other even exoplanets.
And the biggest recommendation I think that we can give is, even if you don't have any equipment in the backyard, I saw it the other night looking out the window here at Trekzone HQ with the moon slowly coming away from its full moon state. Mars is pretty close by, and just seeing the bright object of Mars right next to that slowly dimming moon. It's a really cool sight, even just with the naked eye.
Yeah, it's very bright. Mars looks like a red dot because it is red, and it appears as a nice red point of light. Planets don't twinkle in the nighttime sky, whereas the stars do. So it's always a great way of figuring out if it's a planet or a star as well. And you can see it rising from about 8:30, 9 o'clock, depending on your local time, and sunset. It's pretty much up all evening. And so Mars will be with us for a number of months to check out in the nighttime sky.
Alrighty, Brad. Well, that's a wrap on our 95th Talkin' Science. It's been, as I say, every week, fun to pick apart the stories of the week. And we're going to do it again for at least the next 5 weeks and get to that episode 100, and we might have some balloons or something.
Some space balloons, that's right.